The purpose of this video is to show you how to build a historical aging of account receivable with SQL. Most of ERP systems have out-of-the-box reports for aging, for AR, but most of the time these reports are at a specific point of time. And usually the need is to see the improvement or the degradation of the account receivable of an organization. So it's often a complex report to build. It's often done manually. Often data is lost. And so what I'm going to show you today is how to build it, how to basically recreate the past to see how your account receivables are doing over time. So to do so, I created a database with a data set that basically have two fact table, one for invoices and one of cash receipts. So this one would be the sales, all the invoices basically with customer, product. They could be more detailed. So in this case, I kept it very simple for purpose of this video, but usually, yeah, there is more data points. But in this case, it's going to be like I kept it very simple. And so here I have all the cash receipts that I got to pay these. So now I'm going to start with the first step. It's going to be to list all the dates that are available in my system. To do so, I'm just going to I'll make the SQL code available in the description. For this one, I just took a script from Google that I put the beginning date and the end date. So list me all the dates between these two dates. These two dates are the dates in my invoice table. And to build my SQL, I will use a lot of CTEs. So this is just a reminder, this is not a beginner SQL video. So if you have no concept of SQL, maybe just try to learn some before watching this video. So this will be my first CTE that I will use. So I took the first date in my invoice table available and my last date. So if I run this, I get all the dates. Next CTE is I'm not going to have my report by date. I could, but it would create an insane amount of records. So to limit the number of records and make it more efficient, I will just keep the values by periods. So I will transform all these dates into calendar periods. It could be there could be calendar or fiscal, but in this case I'm just doing it fiscal. So here you see I put my format, so it's going to be year, P, and month. The reason I put a P here, it's usually this data end up in Excel, and when you put a dash or a more standard format, Excel tries to convert the value in a date, and then it's always a problem. So I rather keep it in that format. Excel doesn't try to transform it into a date, and it's usually easier to work with Excel. So now I can look at what I have here. Select star from my period list. So here I have all my period. Okay. Okay, this next CTE I'm going to build, I want to have my data by invoice numbers. n by period type that will match these period. So now I'm just going to create an aggregate of my invoice data. So invoice periods. So I'm going to use my invoice table here. Here I'm going to use an alias invoice number. And now I want to have my format, same format as this one, but I'm going to use the invoice date. I'm going to call this one transaction period because I'm going to match later on. I'm going to match this to my cash receipts. Okay, and finally I'm going to sum my invoice amount. Okay, then group by, do a little indentation and a little, and here I see, okay, I've got my query works. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the cash receipt. So exact same thing. So I'm just going to paste the aggregation. So my group by, same thing, period. Here in the cash receipt, the invoice number is called the document number, but it's basically the invoice number. And group by, the same thing. I'm going to test it just to make sure. Okay, so it works. Okay, so now I have my invoice and my cash receipts in the same format in a CTE, so that I can reuse in my query. Now the next CTE will be, I want to have for every single invoice all the periods available. So it's going to generate a lot of records, and so it depends of the data that you available to you. There could be some performance adjustment to be made in these cases, but for this data set, it's very limited. So it's going to work fine, but just keep in mind that in a normal production environment, there could be some adjustment to be made for what I'm about to do. So I'm going to reuse my CTE invoice period for this one, and I'm going to call it duck period combination. So I want all the invoices, so for all the period. Okay, so if I look earlier, let's say I'm looking at my invoices, I have 1,000 invoices. Yeah, and I have, if I look at earlier, I have, let's say I'm looking at my period list, I have 78 period. So I'm expecting 78,000 records for this query. Okay, so to do so, I'm going to use a join called cross join, which is a kind of a dangerous join to use, but in this case, it's going to be okay. But you have to be careful with this one. Okay, so I'm going to have here select, I'm going to call this one transaction period, and I'm going to use my cross join on my period list, my 78 period list that I have here. So here I want my invoices and my period. And PL, I'm going to call it PL store. So I'm going to see the results, 78,000 records. Okay, next step will be to join all these combination of invoices and period to my actual values. So I'm going to first do my invoices. So I'm going to call this next one invoice 1 and another CTE, and in this case I'm going to do select. I'm going to use the CTE I just created, so duck period combination, and I'm going to going to do a left join. So left join will keep all these values, but will assign my invoices to each of one of them if there is a match. If not, it will left the record at null. So left join. So here I'm going to call this one DPC. And so invoice period that I created earlier. So this one's going to be called IP. And so my join is going to be on DPC invoice number equal IP doc. Yeah. So actually this one I'll call it now I'll leave it as this one. IP invoice number. And then period. So DPC transaction period equal IP transaction period. Okay, so now I can do, I'll keep all my document end period. Call it document number PC period transaction period. And now, and then I'll keep also the invoice amount, sales amount. And I will also, and now I'm going to use the Windows period, the Windows function. Okay, so what I want to do here is replicate for every single, so if there is a sale, let's say in P1 for invoice 26, I want it to be repeated until the next invoice. So I'm going to use a sum sales amount. I'm just going to keep both fields so we can see it. And then over. And then I want to partition my Windows function by invoice number. So I'm going to use this one. I'm going to do a nice indentation. So the keyword here is partition by. And then the next keyword is order. And I want it by transaction period. And finally, this one is the keyword to have the same amount repeated. By the way, here I not necessarily have to use sum. I could have used something else like a max, because I know that's the lowest level of details. So, but I'll just leave it at sum. So now I have my Windows function, and we'll see how it behave. So select star from invoice 1. So if I look here, it's exactly what I want. So invoice 1 was issued on P1 of 2020. So I have the amount repeated itself all the way to the next invoice. And then I have P2. Then if I go, let's say I go further down. So I have invoice 4104, 22 of P8, and then to the next one, and so on and so forth. So I have no values for, let's say, prior to P8 of 2022, but I do have, it's only starting at P8. So this is exactly what I want. So I'm going to do the exact same logic, but with the cash receipts. So I'm just going to copy paste my script, but it's the exact same logic. And then I'll be able to match them together and get a balance per period, per document number. Okay, here it's invoice number. Okay, so now my final step will be to bring these two CTE together and derive a balance per month per invoice. So to do so now I don't need a CTE because this is my final result. So select. So I'm going to start with my invoice one, and I'm going to do so I'm going to call an alias invoice. I'm going to do an inner join because I know that they're both 78,000 record. They all have the same number of record. So CR1 I called it, so alias CR, and it's on invoice document number, yes, equals CR invoice number, and transaction period equal CR transact period. So what I want to do here, I want to have all my invoice document number and my transact period. And now I'm going to do my sales amount minus my cash receipt, which is going to give me a balance per month, regardless of the period. So invoice sales amount minus cash receipts amount paid. And I'm going to call this one balance. Okay, so now if I look at the results, there's something that doesn't work. I can see that everything is null. So what I'll just check if I'll put next to each other. Okay, so the problem is that when SQL try to do an operation against a null, it equals a null. So I'm going to use a function called coalesce. Yeah, so coalesce will take a null and transform it into whatever you tell him to do. So in that case, I want it to be 0. Okay, so same for the cash receipt. Now if I look, okay, now I have results that make more sense. So now that seems to be working. So what I'm going to do at this point, because I have my 78,000 records, but I don't need the 78,000. I just need the records with balances. So I'm going to put a where clause just with the balances. So I'm going to reuse this one and doesn't equal to 0. Now the results make more sense. And I don't need these two fields, I just need the balance. So now this is the simple results that I want. In the next video, I will create another metric that we need to have our report. It's to create the aging, the number of days outstanding per records here. And in the third video, we'll import all of that into Power BI to generate a nice dashboard.